The first question for all three candidates concerns economic development. What is your philosophy on how best to improve Oakland's economy, and what role do you see for commercial development and retail stores? The first to respond will be Ignacio de la Fuente.
Again?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I guess, okay.
I guarantee it won't be you starting each time.
One of my top priorities, economic development, is revitalizing this city like we have never seen in 3 decades. Economic development and institutional investment is the one that is transforming the city. Increasing our tax base would allow us to, again, the next step, to bring back major retail so we can, so the $1 billion that we spend in Walnut Creek or in Emeryville will be spent in Oakland. Secondly, the private sector is the one that creates the jobs and the opportunities for local people. Education will continue to be one of my priorities because we have to develop the workforce of the future. We have to take advantage of this incredible number of jobs that are created by the private sector with economic development. We have to maximize and leverage the infusion of institutional investment so we can redo our infrastructure, improve our infrastructure that needs $200 or $300 million to make sure that the city be the best city we can be, and we can actually sustain all this economic development that we are bringing to the city of Oakland. I will continue Jerry Brown's plan to bring more people to Oakland. I will continue supporting economic investment in Oakland. I will continue making sure that those jobs and opportunities go to local residents, and I continue to use that increase in tax base to protect the citizens, to provide a safe city, and to make sure the economic development transforms not only the city but the people that live in it.
Ron Dellums will be the next to respond.
Thank you. First, let me just say that economic development is not simply nor solely nor singularly an investment in building. It's investment in the human potential and the human resources of our community. And those things have to go hand in hand. That said, development, the questions are not whether we will or will not develop. The question is, what will be the direction of that development? What will be the values and principles that will guide that development? What are the appropriate policies that will embrace those values and principles as we go forward? Who sits at the table? Who benefits? And who is uplifted as a result of all of that? In my mind's eye, we need to plan for Oakland going forward. All residents need to be at the table. No one sector of our community should have the power nor the strength to determine the direction of a city. A city is a living organism, and every part of that community should be part of that planning as we go forward evolutionarily. I think Oakland is on the verge of a magnificent evolution. The question is, do we go there willy-nilly, or with our brilliance and our genius and our talent that lies in this room and other places, do we come together to get that job done?
Nancy Nadel.
Sure. My philosophy around economic development is that the government is there to complement the market forces and to be sure that the economy in Oakland meets the needs of all the residents. The first thing we have to do is preserve some industrial land in our city, which is hotly being gobbled up by housing developers, market rate housing developers. My opponent has not been supportive of our having a moratorium while we make decisions about how to use that very precious 13% of our city land. We can't have jobs if we don't have industrial land. The kinds of industries that I think we can attract, and I've been working on this with a task force in West Oakland already, really looking at what it is that we can grow here in Oakland, the multimedia industry, film, video, and sound, prototype development in high-tech, biotech, high-tech communications and biotechnology. Manufacturing is still possible in the city. It's for products that are expensive, but that makes it possible for us to still afford to pay people who are working here for those products. So in the food industry, the fashion industry, and artisan development, port ancillary businesses, and of course retail. And we have, I have concepts of where the retail ought to be in the city, but I have a stop right in front of me, so I'll stop.
Ignacio, you happen to be the first one up on the next one as well. But like I said, I guarantee this won't happen every time. The next question concerns Oakland's...
I'm always first anyways.
The next question concerns Oakland's waterfront. What is your vision for Oakland's waterfront? Do current plans provide for enough open space, affordable housing, or other community benefits?
My plan for the Oakland waterfront is the Oakland waterfront belongs to the people of Oakland. It's 18 miles of great waterfront. I think that that's the reason why I supported Measures DD and work hard with my colleagues, Councilmember Bruner and Councilmember Danny Wan, to make sure that that happened. I think we are in an incredible revitalization of our waterfront. I believe that when you look at the open space from Union Point Park in my district to the one that the Harbor Bay Park in my colleague's district is a signal of what we believe, that this council believes is the use of the waterfront. We'll continue expanding the Martin Luther King shoreline. We'll make the connection between San Francisco Bay Trail and the City of Oakland Trail all the way to San Leandro Marina, San Leandro Bay. I think we are on our way. I think open space is part of every project that is on the books and every project that we're supporting. From the next project is going to be the biggest challenge, which is the Hope to 9. I believe that it is part of the agenda to make sure the open space and public access to this waterfront that belongs to everyone is not just for the people that can afford to buy a condo in front of the water, but every person that lives in East Oakland, West Oakland, and Central East Oakland, they can enjoy the water that belongs to all of us.
Nancy Nadel will be the next responder.
Okay, I envision public access to the full length of our estuary waterfront, and I think the question really is trying to get us to speak more to the issue of the Oak to Ninth development, so I'll focus my comments on that. I think that the current developer plans for Oak to Ninth do not include enough open space, and as the estuary plan had suggested to us, I think we can do better. I think that the problem is that we aren't thinking about it as if it's public land. This is public land, as my colleague mentioned, but instead of saying, okay, this is public land, this is the way we want it, we've said, this is public land, Mr. Developer, how do you want to do it for us? We need to have given a lot more direction. Now we're having to back up and negotiate and bargain and beg, and I don't think that's the approach we should have. I want to see a balance of open space, historic preservation of the older part of the warehouse, affordable and market rate housing. I support affordable housing wherever we have market rate housing. And yesterday at the Rules Committee, I presented for scheduling and deliberation the incredible work of the Coalition for Affordable Housing so that we can actually get an inclusionary zoning policy here in Oakland. And I hope that we get that on, through the council. If we don't, we'll get it through the ballot in November.
Ron Dellums.
Thank you. First of all, Oakland is a harbor community. This is an extraordinary asset. We have a great opportunity here to create a jewel of this region that will be to the advantage of all of the residents of Oakland, if not the entire region. In that regard, I believe that whenever there are public resources, and I agree with my distinguished colleague on this, whenever public resources are placed at the hands of a development, then there ought to be a benefit back to community. I've talked with a number of groups, from environmentalists to affordable housing advocates. No one opposes the project, but what they do want is to enter into a legitimate, honest, face-to-face negotiation that allows open space to be there, tremendous access to the harbor for all of the residents of Oakland, and that part of the community benefit package allows affordable housing to be part of that project. I think that that makes sense, and that's in ultimately the best interest of the residents of Oakland.
The next question concerns poverty. Some areas of Oakland have experienced great prosperity, while others are plagued by persistent poverty. What do you see as the causes of such poverty, and what would you do as mayor to alleviate it? First, Ron Dellums.
Thank you. As I said before, it would be criminal for us to allow poor people to become invisible to us. There are 80,000 human beings in Oakland who live below the poverty level. The people who have the privilege of working 2 or 3 jobs to live in poverty in Oakland, the numbers are even higher. 1 out of every 3 children in Oakland lives in poverty. That's an abomination. That should be a shame. Poverty is multidimensional. It has a health dimension, deal with health. It has a housing dimension, we have to deal with housing. It has a job dimension, we have to deal with job. It has an education dimension, we have to deal with education. It has a criminal justice and a social justice dimension, we need to deal with it at every one of those levels. So that is why I'm suggesting that at every one of these levels, we have to come to grips with poverty. Ultimately, this ought to be a federal issue. But until we get the federal government to wake up to its responsibilities, poor people are living and dying in Oakland, and we have a responsibility to turn to our fellow citizens and say that we will stand with them in attempting to eradicate poverty in this community.
Nancy Nadel.
Thank you. The causes of poverty are many. We've isolated people by race and income in Oakland for decades, and we're still living with the ramifications of it. We have inferior education in the low-income neighborhoods. We have left untreated drug and alcohol addiction problems. We have greater toxic pollution in the low-income neighborhoods and less access to health care. We have a low minimum wage. The cost of housing and food is extremely high, and we have unrecognized mental illness. All of those things in various combinations affect the poverty in our community. What are the solutions? My family literacy initiative. It's a very important one, and I'll talk about it more as I get the opportunity during this campaign. Mixed income developments in every neighborhood, working with the county to increase capacity for dealing with the great elephant in the room, our serious addiction problems in the city of Oakland, which we do not deal with. Raising the minimum wage, addressing toxics in the neighborhoods, working with the county to provide health care for uninsured, like San Francisco County has done. I don't know why Alameda County hasn't explored it. Organized for prison and youth authority reform, one of the biggest problems in our state. Passing the inclusionary zoning ordinance, as I mentioned, and working with the county to start a housing trust fund, which I've already started to do.
Ignacio de la Fuente.
Two most important things that a mayor can do realistically in the city of Oakland to deal with poverty is good schools and create jobs. I think the good schools is educate people so we can create jobs, and jobs are created by the private sector and continue this economic revitalization in order for us to really deal with poverty in the long term, not just in the short term. Social programs and handouts don't really help. Sometimes it feels good, but it doesn't really help in the long term. Good schools, good education, jobs for people that will be able to fill the family, affordable housing that we are creating in every project, major project in Oakland. Contrary to what a lot of people think, I believe that this council, this mayor, in the last 7 years, we have created 30% more affordable housing than in the last 20 years. So it will never be enough. But the fact is they provide good schools, good education, good jobs with the private sector jobs, and educate people so they can take advantage of the jobs at the Oakland Airport, at the port. 32% of the jobs, only 1/3 of the jobs at the Oakland Airport are Oakland residents. Why? Because when openings become available, our people are not capable of taking those jobs. We have to make that our top priority, and that's what I will do as mayor.
The next question concerns crime. As mayor, what would you do to reduce crime? Nancy Nadel.
Well, as an initiator of Measure R and Measure Y, it's because of the work that I began that we actually have a budget to do something about crime. I think that the issue has to be analyzed carefully to start with. You have to separate the crimes of poverty, crimes stemming from drug addiction, and crimes from sociopathic behavior, because each one needs a different strategy to address it. I have innovative strategies for recruiting new officers. We have a recruitment problem for officers in the city of Oakland. I want to implement the community policing policy that we have laid down and hasn't been implemented, even though it's been in effect for years and years and years. We need a consistent officer walking the beat in each neighborhood and a career path for community policing. I'm working on developing an infrastructure for restorative justice. And we need a statewide organizing effort to demand real rehabilitation in the prison and CYA. If we don't have that, we will not solve the crime problem. We have people going into the institutions coming out way worse than when they went in, and that is an ongoing problem. We have 3,000 parolees coming into Oakland every year and tens of thousands of people on probation. The institutions are not helping them. We need to make sure those institutions change. That's our precious tax dollars.
Ron Dellums.
Thank you. First, I would associate myself with the remarks of the previous speaker and simply add this. Number one, in terms of the efficient and effective deployment of the police in the debate between 911 responses and community policing, I opt for community policing. That allows the community and the police to come together to develop better trust. The fact that only, what I understand is that in the evenings there are only 35 police officers in the beats around the city. That has to change. That, in my opinion, is not effective deployment of the police. Number two, as has been stated before and in this short period of time, there are socioeconomic issues that contribute themselves to crime. And we need to address those issues, and I've already talked briefly about that. Finally, young people out there on the streets, we can preach at them, we can put them in prison, but I believe that we have to show them different options. We have to understand their hopes and their dreams and their aspirations and provide new opportunities for them, both economically, socially, and educationally, providing them an opportunity to realize that there's a different way of life out there, different new ways of providing recreation opportunities for people after school, a whole range of things that have to happen, but crime can only be dealt with on a multidimensional level, and I'm more than prepared to address it at that level.
Ignacio de la Fuente.
Thank you. Different than my colleague, I think crime is crime. I've been in 104 House meetings throughout Oakland, and I can tell you that crime is one of the biggest concerns that they have. From Maxwell Park to Rockridge to Lakeshore to you name it. Nobody differentiates the difference between crime because of sociological problems or not. Crime is our responsibility to control, and we have to deal with it. I support Measure Y with more additional police officers, different than my colleague. It was more money for social programs than for police officers. I believe that we already have millions of dollars going into social programs. I support that, but we need 63, Measure Y provided money for 63 additional police officers. Secondly, many of you in this room supported the neighborhood law court. The City Attorney John Russo started it. Why? Because we have to find different ways to address the problems. I was instrumental in co-authoring the public nuisance ordinance to deal with to abate properties, proper liquor stores, people that create crime, and help crime develop in our communities, and deal with that without taking that much time from police. So we have to be honest about the fact that we have a problem, we have an increase in crime, we have a gang problem, and we have to deal with it. And we have to deal with it with most police officers, with a more comprehensive approach. And yes, part of that is social programs and help people out of the troubles that they are in. But our first priority is to reduce crime, is to protect citizens of Oakland, and that's what I will do.
Many of Oakland's youth are growing up with risks to their safety and without the support they need to reach their full potential. What would you do as mayor to ensure that Oakland's youth reach adulthood safely and with the tools to succeed? Ron Dellums.
Let me start by telling you two stories. I met with a number of young people. A young white woman student from Oakland Tech stood up and told me she came from privilege, but she couldn't wait to get out of Oakland because it was a small town that provided her with no future, nor any future for her peers. I met shortly thereafter with an African-American father who said when he put his children on the plane off to college, he said, "Don't come home until you've sought your fortune." And here are two people from two different places saying the very same thing and seeing Oakland in the very same way. My response to that was, what happened that our young people are no longer our priority? And there's something very tragic and very painful and very difficult about that. I want to see young people in this community empowered. I'm going around saying to them that your age cannot be a deterrent to your right of citizenship. Help us govern in this community. Bring young people to the table so that they are part of the decision-making apparatus. That will allow us to affect the kind of reforms that will allow young people to go forward. Involve them in this community. Hear them and make them part of this community, and let them know that we understand them, that they are full citizens and have the right to fully participate.
Nancy Nadel.
I'm sorry Mr. Dellums ran into those two people who don't like Oakland. Most of the kids that I talk to really love Oakland, and there are good reasons to do that, but there's certainly a lot more we can do. I think what we need to do first and foremost is encourage a respect for education, a real climate and love of education in our city. We have 35% of our people with graduate degrees and 35% who can't read above fourth grade level. So we need to bridge that gap. We need to develop a feeling of a functional family in the city so that when we have folks who can't read and folks who are having trouble, we have somebody else ready to step in and be the responsible adult in that person's family if they don't have one themselves. We need parenting classes in our rec centers with money for dinner and child care. We need to really develop a base of mentors to help those who don't have the adult stable figure in their lives. We need to implement my family literacy initiative, which I think I've mentioned a couple times before. We need to assure that we reauthorize Kids First, which is about to be finished. I can't remember exactly which year it is, but we need to make sure that that gets reauthorized so that we have the same $10 million a year coming out of our budget for youth programs. We need to increase the capacity for the Mayor's Summer Job Program and monitor the effects of school systems that are being taken over by mayors in other cities and see if that's something that really would work here in Oakland. We certainly have a administrator who is not in touch with our city and not in touch with our community. We need to make sure that the school district is really a democratic process and responsible to the people of Oakland.
Ignacio de la Fuente.
Sound like a broken record. I think the number one priority of the mayor should be improving our schools. A lot of the reasons why we have crime in our streets and our merchants are complaining because most of our youth are on the streets. A lot of them. The truancy problem in Oakland is a real problem and a big problem. We have to improve the schools. We have to provide a safe environment for the kids in the schools. We have to make sure that we attract and retain teachers so they can keep kids in the classrooms, so we can graduate a higher number of kids instead of losing them. All of those issues, I believe, that will answer a lot of the problems that we have in Oakland. And until we are real about, or the mayor is real about really embracing that responsibility of public education and make sure that every school teach our children and every school can retain the kids in the classroom instead on the streets, we will not deal with that problem. And I believe that the long term, I think it's always that we can issue band-aids to problems. We're looking at long term, 10, 20, 30 years from now. The next generation of our citizens of Oakland, the next people that will be running the city, be working for you and working for businesses. And the only way that we're going to be able to change that is by providing a good education, providing a good environment, providing those opportunities that will deal with that problem, not only for now, but for the future.